Having a good day so far? Yes. That's what we like to hear. So you are here today to see our Astronomy and Islam introduction show. I very much hope you're looking forward to it. We're joined today by Akhlaq from the New Crescent Society, who's going to be talking to you later on about spotting the new crescent moon and all about the Islamic calendar. But before that, we're going to be having a planetarium show where I'm going to show you a little bit about the links between astronomy and Islam. Before we begin though, there are a couple of health and safety things I do need to go over first. It won't take very long. When I go to the back of the room, I'm going to be turning down the lights all the way. It's going to be darker in here than your typical cinema. And that's so that we can see lots of stars, planets, and of course the moon up there in the night sky and make the best possible use of our planetarium. However, that does mean that if you needed to leave the planetarium while the show is going on, it might make things a bit more difficult. So here's how you'll do that. Head towards the ends of the row, around the outside, but not too comfortable. It's very easy to fall asleep in here. And if you do start snoring, everyone will know. Hope you enjoy the show. There's been a strong link between astronomy and Islam that we can see throughout history, as well as in its religious practices used today. The sun's location, for example.
I feel it's been well worth your while. Work that we do. What we're going to go through today is just 10 facts about the Islamic calendar. We're going to talk about and learn about how to sight the hilal, the new crescent moon. Again, just summarize what the kind of work that New Crescent Society is doing and what we hope to achieve. Who can spot, this one might be a little bit easier for everyone out there, who can spot the new crescent moon in this picture? Just point up there. Yeah, this was actually taken, a picture, one of my favourite pictures, it was taken from this location up on the roof a few years back. And I think you'll all agree it's a beautiful, stunning picture of the London skyline. I'd like to share this with you. This is actually a clip that I filmed myself a couple of years ago, in the Islamic year 1443, from Galleon's Hill, not far from here in Thamesmead. It's actually the hilal of Ramadan setting over London. And that night I was on my own, on top of this hill, and I'm not joking, I literally experienced every kind of weather imaginable. It was cold, it was raining at one point, and hailstones and snow. Right, so facts about the Islamic calendar. Now, would you know that the Islamic calendar was actually founded by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, peace be upon him, and it's actually one of, you'll find like no other religions, I guess, have a calendar that was founded by the founder of the religion. It's loosely based on the pre-Islamic Arabian calendar, and actually what we know is that the rules of the Islamic calendar were defined by Allah in the Quran, and also Prophet ﷺ in his final year of life on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah in what's known as the final sermon. So here he explained and defined the rules of the Islamic calendar and corrected some errors that previous communities were practicing. Now, I guess a lot of people may know the Islamic calendar is based around the lunar calendar. It's definitely not a visibility calendar. It's based on the sighting of the new crescent moon. The time that it takes for the moon to complete its cycle is about 29 and a half days. So therefore in the month you either have 29 or 30 days, and there's 12 months. So if you correlate that with the Gregorian, the solar calendar, we'll find that it's shorter by 10 or 11 days. As I said, the month begins with moon sighting. So what we do is we're told to look for the hilal, which is the waxing crescent, the new crescent moon, at the end of the month. Now you might hear from a lot of people that the Islamic calendar begins with the new moon. That's categorically wrong. The new moon is, as Gregory mentioned before, it's the invisible phase. You will not be able to see it. The correct term would be the hilal or the waxing crescent, which again, like I say, you'd expect to see that on the 29th of the Islamic month. And if you don't, very simple, you just count 30 days and you complete the month and begin a day after. So how we'll find it is that during the year, about half the months we'll have 29 days, and people think it's very difficult to see the hilal. It's actually not. It's really easy, and it's very practical. You can go out yourself, and we definitely encourage you to, wherever you are in and around the UK. Here we have a picture of a madrasa school in Hackney, and they just were sighting from their balcony. You can see people sighting from their gardens in parks. Just going through the cycle of the lunar cycle. So the month does not begin on the new moon. We begin with the waxing crescent, and then cycling round to the first quarter, all the way around to the full moon and back again. Another fact, we'll say it's a local calendar. The reason being, just like with the sun, you don't expect to see the sun rising or setting around the world at the same time. The moon is very similar in that respect. So this is, you'll often see this kind of like a graph, a visibility graph, showing what we expect the moon to be visible like. The green showing where it's easily visible. To anything beyond the red is actually before what we call conjunction, before the new moon, the invisible phase, where the moon has not actually come into visibility. Calendar does not match the seasons. With the Gregorian calendar, obviously we have summer and winter, and we expect it to be around the same time of year, but the Islamic calendar we do not, due to the difference in the time, 10 or 11 days shorter than the Gregorian year. These are the blessed months that we're told. 3 of them are together. They're around Dhul Hijjah, which is the month of pilgrimage. So we understand that in these months there was no war, and we could understand that with Hajj, for example, a lot of pilgrims were traveling through the area. They'd know that they were safe and they were not going through a war zone. For example, Rajab is on it. The pre-Islamic Arabs used to practice something called nasi. What they would do, they would add a 13th month to the calendar. And there's many reasons why they did this. They wanted to go back to war. They didn't want the pilgrimage that they used to do to be in the summer months. So every now and again they would add a month to keep it in shorter winter days. The Prophet ﷺ, indeed Allah banned this practice. In fact, in the Quran it's very strongly worded as it brings you closer to kufr, so any kind of tampering with the calendar in a sense is very serious indeed. I'll just go back to this actually. I might mention another reason they added 13th month was to help trade. It's mentioned in Surah Quraysh actually, the trade route that used to go from Syria down through Jerusalem, Palestine, into the Jordan. Again, they would prefer the trade to be around the Hajj months, just to make more money. That's an interesting fact there. So, finally, we definitely know we can see the Hilal from the UK. It's very simple. You can sight wherever you are in the UK, from your home, in a park, a wide open field. I'll just watch a short video now with you.
A month in the Islamic calendar is either 29 or 30 days. If you can see the new crescent on the 29th, it will have 29 days. If you cannot, it will have 30 days. If you want to see the new crescent, this is what to do. Step 1, go to a place with a clear view of the sunset. This is because the new crescent will always appear near the sunset. Step 2, locate and mark exactly where the sun is setting. Step 3, wait for it to darken, perhaps around half an hour, and keep looking for the new crescent. If the moon is visible, it will appear usually no more than around 25 degrees to the left of the sunset. That's around 1 handspan, or you can measure that using a compass. Alhamdulillah, you've sighted the moon, and now you can recite the dua. For more information and to keep updated, follow New Crescent Society on Facebook.
That's very interesting. So Gregory just touched upon that earlier as well in terms of using your hand for locating the position of the moon. So we use the hand span, you spread your hands out wide for work. Move to certain localities and just an illustration of example of how big the world is, and obviously with the prayer times linked to, for example, the viewing of the sun rising and setting for Maghrib. Different parts of the world will be praying at different times. Here you may be praying Fajr, but in the west coast of America, they may be still just waking up for Fajr. Illustration of the visibility of the moon on the globe, and you can see like where we would expect to see the hilal and where not, depending on where you are. So it's very, very natural to expect to see the hilal at a different time compared to other countries around the world. So that we'd be expecting to look for the next month. This is on the 11th of January. So I've chosen these dates because it's around the dates of conjunction, which is the new moon. There's people all around the country looking. We even had a sister up on the Shetland Isles to look for the hilal. Pictures from different gatherings. There's no sign from. Just drop us a message, and we'll definitely help where we can. Our own efforts for sighting the hilal on the 13th. You can join us if you would like to be part of the live stream, which we have had many different people and families join us. Just drop us a message again, and we'd be happy to have you. It was at 4:30 p.m. on 13th of January. It's a Saturday, so everyone's off. Definitely make a day of it. And we are on social media. Today, if you'll find, there's no reception in this room, but there is free Wi-Fi here. You'll find us on social media on all the platforms. Do post, do tag us, and
prayer or the Qibla before smartphones were invented to help us find our location. What I want to do today is take you through a journey of the night sky to show you both the connection between astronomy and Islam, and how Islamic astronomers have helped shape our modern understanding of astronomy. Let's first take a look at the moon, specifically how to spot the new crescent moon, the first view of the moon after a new moon, and the start of the next calendar month in Islam. We are currently looking at the sky on Friday night, the 12th of January, which is when you might be able to spot the next new crescent moon if we have very good conditions. Most people will know that the sun rises in the east every morning and sets in the west every evening. The moon also rises and sets a bit like the sun, rising in the east and setting in the west. However, we don't always see moonrise and moonset because they change time every day. On the evening of a new crescent moon, what we are seeing is actually the moon just as it's about to set over in the west. So let's spin the dome around so that the west is directly in front of us, making it a bit easier for us to spot it. The Royal Observatory has strong ties to the phases of the moon as well, because the observatory was originally designed to predict the positions of the moon, planets and stars to help navigation at sea. These predictions were published in the Nautical Almanac, which started in 1767. The Nautical Almanac is still published today, but it's moved from the Royal Observatory down to His Majesty's Nautical Almanac office in Taunton, Devon. We've used the Nautical Almanac to predict that Friday would be the first evening you might be able to spot the new crescent moon. The calculation is incredibly complicated, but to see the new crescent moon, the moon must be above the horizon while the sun is below it. This is because it must be dark enough to be able to spot the moon in the first place. Also, there must be a gap between the moon and the sun in our skies, where the minimum gap required is called the Danjon limit. So, it's been in front of you for the last few moments. Has anyone been able to spot the new crescent moon? Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'll be honest, Friday the 12th is going to be a bit on the tricky side to spot it. It's not impossible, but it is going to be very low and very, very thin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the moon about 20 times bigger than it normally would be. Let's see if that helps. There we go. It's now 20 times bigger. Anyone see it yet? Nope. Nope. Almost everyone's pointing way, way too high. It is, in fact, about here. And the only reason I know that is because I cheated and looked for it earlier on with the lights off. I'll be honest, as I say, it's going to be a bit tricky. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move the day on one day. And the moon has now moved from where it was to here. Now it's considerably bigger, considerably brighter, much, much easier for you to spot. Known as its altitude and how far around the horizon it is, called its azimuth. In order to be able to find the moon, you're going to be looking roughly 30 minutes after sunset. That'll be the best, at least for the 12th. And at this time, the moon will appear in the west around 3 degrees above the horizon. So how are you going to measure that? Well, the best way is for you to take your hand of about 2 minutes. The new crescent moon on the night that it's spotted will mark the start of the across to. Even with the unaided eye, as long as enough of the moon is being lit up, you've got a chance of being able to spot some features on the surface of the moon. And now that I've made the moon a little bit later into its month, there are a few features which have been lit up for us. The darker regions on the surface of the moon, those are known as the Maria, or the seas. This is Latin for seas. Maria is Latin for seas, and this is what early astronomers thought that they could see on the surface of the moon. They imagined that this is what oceans looked like from far away. If I light up the whole of the surface of the moon, so we can see all of it, it doesn't really look like oceans, does it? But that's because we're much, much closer to the moon, and back then they didn't have telescopes to be able to zoom in. Now we know that these dark regions are actually basalt, volcanic rock, lava that cooled to become what we see today. So the weird thing is, even though they're wrong, they aren't oceans at all, they were oceans about 4 billion years ago. But not oceans of water, oceans of lava. We can also see many craters on the moon. It's been battered over time by bits of rock from space. More than 20 of the craters on the moon are named after famous Muslim astronomers throughout history who helped lay the foundation of modern astronomy. For example, one crater is called Alpheganus, named after astronomer Alpheghani. He was an astronomer who lived in modern-day Baghdad in the 9th century, and he helped calculate the diameter of the Earth and published a book mapping the stars and their movements. Another crater, Albategnius, is named after the astronomer Al-Battani, who lived and worked in Raqqa in north-central Syria in the 9th century. One of his best-known achievements was determining that a solar year is approximately 365 days, 5 hours, 46 minutes, and 24 seconds long. This is only 2 minutes and 22 seconds off the true value. The most accurate prediction for 1,000 years. He also did calculations for tables of the movement of the sun and moon that were used hundreds of years afterwards. And some of his calculations are still actually used in geophysics today, particularly when predicting eclipses and explaining the rotation of the Earth. Let's head back to our view of the night sky to have a look for something else. Planets. Ancient civilizations knew of the planets, but they didn't quite understand what they were. In our night sky at the moment, the only ones visible in the relatively early evening. These are the 4 gas giant planets of our solar system, 2 of which are easily visible to the unaided eye. Jupiter, is by far the brightest. It's the closest of these four, and it's by far the biggest of the planets in our solar system, which helped make it so very, very bright in our sky. In fact, chances are you've spotted Jupiter for yourselves over the course of the last few months without even realizing it. It will most likely be the brightest object in the sky when the moon isn't around, appearing even during twilight when the sun's light hasn't quite disappeared from the sky yet. Jupiter will be pushing through already. Saturn isn't quite as bright as Jupiter. It's a bit further away and a bit smaller, but it's still easily visible to the unaided eye. You're beginning to lose Saturn, unfortunately, in the early evening as we go further and further into the year. That's because it's setting earlier and earlier, and so it will be disappearing below our horizon when the sun is still in the sky before too long. At that point, it will become a morning object, and not for a little while yet. So Saturn is here. You have to look out and across the plane of the solar system, so you're always going to be looking towards one of these 12 constellations that forms a ring around our sky. Let's head back to the Earth once more. We've seen the planets or the wandering stars, so next, let's take a look at the fixed stars. Hopefully those lines are going to disappear. We'll find out in a minute. The fixed stars make up the constellations of our constellations visible from our planet. Let's try this again, jumping back to the Earth. That's better. There are all sorts of constellations up there in the sky that we use to help guide us. Orion is the hair of Alcausa. The brightest star in the constellation is this one, known as Betelgeuse or Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse is the only star within this constellation that comes from the original Arabic name of Orion. Thousands of stars are being formed within this rainbow-coloured region. The light you're looking at has taken 1,300 years to reach us. The cloud collapsing under its own weight due to its own gravity is forcing the gas in the centre to grow hotter and denser to the point that new stars can be formed. In fact, this is the most active star-forming region in the local part of our galaxy. Out of all of the stars in the night sky, this is the brightest. Sirius. In Arabic, it's called Al-Shira, and it's the only star mentioned by name in the Quran. Al-Shira translates as the leader because it is the brightest star in our skies. Just above Orion, we have another constellation called Taurus. Some of you may know that this is known as the bull in Greek tradition. And within this constellation is Aldebaran, the brightest star of the constellation. It means the follower in Arabic. The reason Aldebaran is known as the follower is because it is following a beautiful bunch of very hot blue stars known as the Pleiades. In Arabic, these stars are very apt for a beautiful bright star group. This cluster can also be translated as Sirius, which is sometimes used as a girl's name. The Pleiades, or Althoria, are young stars. They're blue because they are very hot. In astronomy, blue stars are the hottest stars and red stars are older, cooler. You might think that's the wrong way round. After all, your taps at home, red is hot and blue is cold. The reason for that difference is your taps are wrong, physics is right. That's because it just is. Al-Sufi worked on translating and expanding previous Greek astronomical works, especially a work from the astronomer Ptolemy called the Almagest, which is a scientific manual for the motion of stars and planets. The publication he made, of course, was his Book of Fixed Stars. He specified 48 constellations in the book that were originally introduced by Ptolemy. Al-Sufi corrected Ptolemy's star list, added his own measurements of the brightnesses of stars and their positions. But he also described each of his 48 constellations in detail. He included tables of the locations, longitudes, latitudes, colours, and magnitudes for every single star.